What's up, everybody? It's me, Coach Mills here, coming at you with the new Season 4 mid-patch tier list. Now, if you saw our previous video on the overarching meta, you know that Junkrat Queen is a god now, and this really changes what DPS are going to be the best and worst to play, and of course, there's all other characters that have gotten changed as well, so there's a lot of things we got to break down to talk about the best and worst DPS, so make sure you smash that like, subscribe if you enjoy the content, and let's get right into it. Now, first off, let's talk about Sojourn. And I rated Sojourn fairly highly in the previous meta. She saw a fair bit of play, not only with the previous Brawl compositions, but she also saw play in the Winston compositions that came afterwards. And I do think that she actually is pretty good now. All around, just going to be a fairly good pick. Just even in a Junkrat Queen matchup, just gets to play at distance. Is never going to get into range of Junkrat Queen, has good mobility, can play with a variety of different compositions, and the fact that you can even play a Sojourn in a poke comp, where when Sigma is enabled or re-enabled in comp, he's going to be like the other strong force of the meta outside of Junkrat Queen on all the sniper maps like Havana and Junkertown and things like that. And the fact that a Sojourn full charge rail can one-shot a Widowmaker, really, really strong. This character is versatile, consistent, powerful. I think that she's almost in the S tier for all those reasons, but I'm going to put her in the very top of A. Really, really solid pick, and is looking like she's just still good in this meta. Now, Ashe is a character that looks a bit worse, if I'm being honest. She's still okay, and I think that she's decent in poke, although in poke in particular, I do think that Sojourn edges her out, and then, of course, the sniper characters like Widow and Hanzo are going to be even better. Ashe also doesn't really play very well with or around a Junkrat Queen, not nearly as much as a Sojourn does, and I think that Sojourn just does a lot of things better than Ashe does right now, pocket or no pocket, and especially because Ashe is a character that really wants that Mercy pocket, and I think that Mercy is way worse right now in a Junkrat Queen meta. Really not having utility that affects the tank matchup all that much, trying to double down on your DPS right now isn't really the best strategy unless you're doubling down on a flyer. I'm really going to put Ashe in the B tier. She's kind of fallen a bit. Still strong, but not nearly as strong or as versatile as Sojourn. Bastion is another strange one. Like, Bastion's okay against Brawl tanks, but really, the problem with Junkrat Queen is that when she engages really, really fast. And if she's engaging anyone with her shouts, Bastion's just gonna, he's just gonna be a wrap. I mean, he's just a wrap. But really, Bastion is kind of generally okay against a lot of the other tanks, and I think he's fine against the Junkrat Queen that doesn't engage properly. It is a bit annoying that he's pretty easy to hit with the knife and pull out of position. So, if you get pulled out of position on Bastion, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to die. I mean, you're just going to get cleaved and killed. I think overall, there are going to be moments where he can shine, but he's too easy to counter. Doesn't really line up very good into the meta when we think about, like, the best 3 tanks right now are, like, Junkrat Queen, Sigma, and D.Va, all of which are, like, fairly fine against Bastion. I'm going to put him in the C tier. I think there could still be some situations where he's okay, but he's just not really that powerful. Cassidy. Cassidy is actually pretty good. I think Cassidy plays really well if you're trying to play a Brawl composition, a Queen Brawl or a Zarya Brawl, even Ramatra. I think that Cass is fairly good. Not really on the sniper maps, of course, but the fact that you can make a Brawl composition and then you play a hit scan so you're still pretty good against flyers, I think is good. It's really, really strong. Echo's going to see a lot of play this season or this mid-season, and just having just something that's good against these flyers in general is going to be great. Cassidy's kind of the best at that and plays really well around a Junkrat Queen. Can just be kind of near her and use the shout to get an aggressive angle, stay alive. The Junkrat Queen can kind of play with the Cass as well. I think all in all, Cass is just fairly good. Nothing fantastic, but still really, really good. Now, Echo is an interesting one because Echo did receive a change where some people think it's more of a buff and some people think it's more of a nerf, but really it's going to feel like a nerf most of the time because really what's happened is that she doesn't charge ultimate as fast when she copies, but she gets her base ultimate a lot more often. And that's going to be, a huge amount of ults throughout the course of the game. 25% more ult charge generated is a lot. And I do think that overall it's going to be a buff. I think Junkrat Queen's actually in a really good state. She also plays really well into the current meta because whether the enemy team is on Ramatra or the enemy team is on Junkrat Queen, those are both great copies, especially Junkrat Queen's like the best copy you could possibly imagine. And I think if you are rocking a Mercy, then Echo's one of the best characters to enable right now. And of course, you don't even really need a Mercy to enable an Echo either. So overall, I think she's just a great pick right now. Just in general, I'm actually going to put her pretty high up. I'm going to put her towards the bottom of A tier. Definitely has ways to counter her, and it's going to be pretty difficult to get the max value out of her, but just having, you know, what is going to be maybe 4 or 5 more ultimates throughout a game is a crazy buff to the character. Even if those ultimates aren't going to be individually as impactful, there is enough value there to win you fights as long as you ult well. Genji. This is just like a terrible time to be Genji. I think he was actually a bit better before when there were dive tanks that were actually going to see play, you know, Winstons and more divas. Like, Genji was actually okay. You could kind of play him as the secondary DPS to follow up with the Tracer. Most of the time Sombra was better, but, you know, Genji was fine. Now, I don't know why you would play Genji, really. I don't really think that it makes the most sense to play Genji at all. The supports that are probably going to see the most players like Kiriko, Lucio. I just don't think that Genji really makes a lot of sense in the meta. He's best against, you know, Zens and Anas, and he plays best with Zens and Anas. He plays best with Winstons, and all these tanks are not going to see play. All these supports are not going to see play nearly as much. I think he's actually just kind of bad. I'm going to put him in the low C. I think he's actually worse than Bastion this season. Unfortunately, sorry Genji players, but I think this is one of the worst seasons we've seen for him in quite a while. Hanzo. Now, on the flip side, we're coming up big for Hanzo. It's coming up big for Hanzo. And you might be thinking, hey, wait, I thought this is a Brawl meta. I thought we're playing Brawl with Junkrat Queen. Why would Hanzo be good when we're playing Brawl, right? That's what you think, face value. But the thing is, Junkrat Queen does a lot more than just Brawl. She does create like this a Brawl-esque composition, but she also enables a dive composition as well, which we'll get to when we could talk about the dive characters. But more important than that, look at how the Brawl developed back when we had Rein, Lucio, Mei, right? We had that composition. We had a Brawl composition. Of course, this Brawl is a little bit different, which I'll talk about the differences later, but we did have a Brawl composition, and Hanzo became one of the best DPS to play. And the reason is, when there's standstills of queens are at standstills. When we talk about the meta, they get into a situation where there's flails, there's boops, there's Suzus, there's things that can shut you down if you go in at the other queen and you get booped away, you waste your shout, whatever. So oftentimes you're looking for some sort of advantage, which means trying to fish for knives, look for opportunities. You're not just running it down in the Junkrat Queen mirror all the time, because you're trying to find a way to create an advantage in the standstill, right? Because you can't move first. You can't just go and run at them. You go and run at them, you use your shout, you try to Suzu, you get booped. Now you have no cooldowns. Now you get engaged upon and you're screwed, right? So there's a lot of standstill going on. A lot of standstill. And having a character that can break up that standstill is amazing. And Hanzo is that character. He's the character that breaks up that standstill. He takes a wide off angle where he can't really get found out or scouted out. He needs to make sure that he's far enough away to where if they pivot onto him, they can't kill him. And he just gets pot shots. He gets a pick, he gets a kill on anything, and then your team engages off of that. Hanzo's also just fantastic in the other maps that are played, which is the sniper maps, right, with around Sigma. Hanzo's fantastic there. So if he's good as a breaker of the mirror in the Junkrat Queen mirror, and he's good in the Sigma matchups on Havana and Junkrat Town and maps like that, then he's just an S tier. He's an S tier. I'm sorry, but this is a Hanzo S tier meta. I know it's crazy to think about, but it's actually really, really cool. Junkrat, kind of for the same reasons that we talked about what the standstill, Junkrat's actually pretty strong. He's actually pretty strong. The fact that he can generate a lot of just general value in those standstill matchups, I think is a bit underrated, and I think that he's actually stronger this season than he was in the previous one. Of course, he's not going to be great into dive. He's going to be a bit better here. He's still not the best thing in the world, but I think he's actually pretty good. I'm going to put him in B. Most of the time, I think Hanzo's just going to do what you want to do on Junkrat a bit better. More high potential to get some definitive value on Hanzo, right? Getting a pick on Hanzo is more guaranteed as opposed to Junkrat. Sometimes enemies can play around it a bit easier, I think. And Hanzo's like only a matter of time. As long as you're in the proper angles, you're not going to get punished. You have wall climb. I mean, I think Hanzo's just way better than Junkrat, but Junkrat can still be good. May's great. May's great. May's really, 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 really good. Really good in the mirrors. Really good in, Zarya is gonna probably see a fair amount of play as well, because Zarya is actually good against Junkrat or Junker Queen directly, and she's good there. I think that May's also pretty good against Ramattra. I think that May's just good. I'm gonna put May in the A tier. I think May's just good, all around good. The only weakness to May is that she's not very versatile. She really wants to play against Brawl. She doesn't want to play against Dive at all. Enemies can definitely swap around to play around a May. But I think that she's just really, really strong. She breaks. Junker Queen mirrors wide open. I'm going to put her in the A tier. I think she's good. Pharah is an interesting one because Pharah Mercy is still strong. Still really strong. And Junker Queen can't do anything about it. On Sigma maps with Widow, you can't play Pharah Mercy, of course. But on a lot of the maps that you might traditionally brawl, I think Pharah could be like the fold to that, which means that she's pretty good. I'm actually going to put her like at the top of B. I think she's good, but you're going to need that Pharah Mercy combo, and you're probably going to want to play it around a tank that enables you. Something like Diva would probably be the best, maybe even Ball. Reaper's actually good, right? Reaper's good. He gets benefited directly from Shout. I think that that's actually good about Reaper. In addition to that, he just generally is underrated, I think. I think Reaper has been underrated for quite some time. I know I spew this a lot, but I do think that he's actually pretty good on a lot of close-range brawl maps. Never will see play on any of the sniper maps, but still, underrated pick, strong character. I'm going to put him here. Ashe, like all these characters are kind of close together. I think they're all close together in power level. Keep in mind that B is still pretty high, still pretty effective DPS, and I think that Reaper deserves a spot in there. Against an unsuspecting team, just Queen or Zarya running it down with the Reaper, really, really good. Soldier 76. So how you would mainly play Soldier 76 is like, let's say we talk about, I know we kind of referenced Queen a million times, but that's really what's kind of driving the meta forward, right? And if we reference that, playing a far off angle on Soldier is just going to be worse than playing a far off angle on Hanzo. I think playing a far off angle on Hanzo is going to be better. You have higher potential to carry. Soldier is going to be in stronger and more flexible, like in more variety of comps, right? So in ranked, Soldier gets points because tanks are going to be a bit more random. As you climb to the higher ranks of play, the Soldier falls off. So I think like in the metal ranks and a lot of ranks, you could make an argument that Soldier's like A, but for the most part, I think he's really going to be like high C. I think he's a bit weaker than these picks. He's flexible, but he doesn't have high power level. Nothing really wrong with him, but I wouldn't want to play him on the sniper maps, nor do I think he's as impactful as like characters like Sojourn, Cass, May, Ekka. Like these characters are way more impactful in the Queen or other brawl mirrors. Sombra is actually a very strong DPS. Very, very, very strong DPS. And she was one of the linchpin DPS that was going to be played in the previous meta with Winston. We're seeing a lot of Winston dive with Tracer Sombra. And we were even seeing some Junker Queen dive with Tracer Sombra. We were seeing that in the Overwatch League. And I think that that's still a possible strategy. That being said, I don't think that Sombra is as good as some of these other picks. I think that she's still strong, though. I'm going to put him at the bottom of A. Still really strong. Can still set up a dive. Can still hack key targets. Can still create engagements. I think she was a bit better in the previous meta. But I'm going to put her at the bottom of A. I think you could justify the top of B, but yeah, I'm going to put her here. Sim. Sim's a weird one to place. I think she's always been very highly placed for ranked. She has one of the highest win rates in ranked play. She's just really, really great in ranked in general. And she's good in brawl. So I don't really think that there's anything against, when you're good at brawl in a brawl meta, then you're automatically going to have some extra value. And I think she's also versatile with her teleporters. You could do some interesting routing options. I'm actually going to put her like here. I think that she's really good. Not quite as strong as like the Pharah Mercy combo, but in most ranks, she's actually going to be a higher tier pick, but I think overall, I'm going to put her in the B tier. It's going to also depend largely on your expertise on the character. Not a character that I think you can just pick up and be good at. You'd have to put the time in to become good at this character. But yeah, I'm going to put her up here. Torbjorn, another pretty good pick, honestly. He's good in those standstills, kind of similar to Junkrat. When I talk about like the standstills when no brawler can really go in or be the first contact, he just generates value, kind of like Junkrat does. I think he's about the same. These characters are kind of doing the same thing where what these two characters are doing in the meta, I think that Hanzo just does better. If you're good at Hanzo, he just does it better because he can generate actual pick value as opposed to just like a subtle pressure. The threat of a one-shot is so much pressure. It's just crazy what Hanzo can do. I'm just putting him, yeah, I'm just putting him up here. But I do think that Hanzo is actually a bit worse than Tracer. I know. Tracer at the highest tier, you know, at the SSS. I know. But hear me out. Couple of things with Tracer. Any of the dive characters that are going to see play, Tracer's going to fit right into that, of course. The Junkrat Queen, even if you're playing like a designated brawl, you can still have a Tracer that is creating a lot of pressure on the enemy team's cooldowns, which is really important. Baiting out boops, baiting out Suzus, forcing teleports, all these things your Junkrat Queen could follow up on. In addition to just that is the Junkrat Queen dive, where being able to shout and coordinate that with the dive is really, really strong, actually. And Zarya's can be pressured heavily by Tracers. Really, Tracer's only weakness, I would say, is that Tracer is not great. Of course, you don't really play Tracer on the Sigma maps, right? I think that outside of those, though, Tracer is just dominant and ranked. Like, just one of the most dominant characters. I can see the argument that Hanzo should be a bit above Tracer, but I do think that Tracer is just so good in the situations where she is good, and so meta where, yes, I think Hanzo's really, really strong on, like, both the sniper maps and in the brawl mirrors, but you could justify other things in his slot, like, oh, I'm going to play a Cassie or I'm going to play a Sojourn here. But Tracer just feels like something that would always play, right? Just always play in the brawl mirrors, always play if there's Ramatras on the other side, any other dive tanks, of course. I'm going to put Tracer in the top S tier, but I think these characters are pretty close together. Hanzo almost edges it out because he's actually playable on the sniper maps when Tracer's not, but yeah. Widowmaker. I mean, she's played on the sniper maps, right? She's just really, really good on the sniper maps. She's not really gonna be fantastic much else. I'm gonna put her here. You can still play her just on general maps where Widowmaker is good, and you can just play her as a character that applies off-angle pressure when your team is playing brawl. I think Hans is a bit better at that, but you can definitely do that on Widowmaker. I'm gonna put her low A. Low A. I think this is a perfectly fine placement for her. And this is really where I will put the DPS right now. This is kind of where I slot things in. If we're going to talk about big movers, you know, Genji's a lot worse. I think Soldier's a lot worse. I think Ashe is a lot worse. Junkrat's quite a bit better. Sombra was already better and then kind of got a slightly worse. You know, Mei's better. Echo's better. Hanzo's a lot better. Tracer's about the same. Soldier's about the same. Cass is about the same. But this is really where the meta has fallen. And I know that I reference a lot of the characters that are playing around and with Junkrat Queen and Zarya and Ramatra and Sigma. But that's really going to be the biggest winners of this meta. And you have to think about the DPS that best enable their strategies. And this is it. So if you have any questions or comments, disagreements or concerns, definitely let me know in the comments down below, but not before smashing that subscribe button. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.